featuring the legendary Larry Bluestein.
The Six Ring King.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Welcome back to the Six Rings King Show on a new night, Monday night now, baby. We're really excited, actually, to have Eric McLean on the show here, college football analyst, co-host of The Huddle. Coach, yes! All right!
First touchdown of the year.
Miami Hurricanes, yeah. You know the name already. It's Mercy. Ha ha. It's a Six-Ring King Show. Can't forget the name though. Got Jazz, Blue, Vision, DJ, break the game code. Ain't no changing them, ain't no breaking them. Real important live from the Hard Rock Stadium. Ball 14 for the orange and green. We see the Six-Ring champs. There's more than a dream. This is life on the field. Beyond 100 yards, a hurricane that's never still put a damage to your squad.
What's wrong with us? Seriously.
What's wrong with us? We're Miami Hurricanes fans.
Welcome to the Six Rings Kane Show, a show dedicated to Miami Hurricane sports, featuring the legendary Larry Bluestein, Jazz Santana, Vish, and Danny Gillette. Let's go Canes.
Hello and welcome to our Six Rings Kane Duke pregame show. We got Blue here. Blue, thanks for joining us.
All right, Vish.
All right, and Jazz should be with us shortly, but time waits for no man. So let's get into this. Blue, I know you've just been talking about watching some Duke film, particular quarterback. I think he's the key to this game is for our defense stopping him. So what are your thoughts there around kind of Duke's offense and how central the quarterback is?
Well, Riley Leonard's a really, really proficient passer. He can run, and he leads the team, and that's the thing right now that Miami has to be aware of. But if you pay too much attention to them, they run the ball a little bit too. Not only does Leonard run, and I think he has like over 400 yards, but they have the kid Jordan Waters who runs extremely well, and then Jalen Coleman. So they come at you offensively, with a run pass option, but the quarterback. I would say that Leonard probably runs in the 4 or 5 range. So if he gets out in the open, he could go. I mean, he's a big guy and he throws the ball extremely well, but you got to respect his feet. And that's the one thing that Miami has had a little problems with, May, even though people didn't think that, North Carolina was going to do all that. Even though they only scored 27 points, he had like quite a few yards, and then both of them on the ground and through the air. But Riley is more of a real duel guy. He's one of those guys that could sting you. Not just get the first down, but he get those extra yards. He's a smart kid, and and the offensive line, I think too, Bish, will be the key for Duke. A senior-oriented line. They have a couple of 23-year-old kids on the line. Kids that have graduated and getting their master's degrees, and but I think Miami's matchup against anybody now with the way that Messidor's come on, and the way that the defense is starting to play a little bit better up front. You see, we weren't concerned with the secondary before because we knew they had experience coming back, but the front seven, that to me. So the key matchup for the defense of Miami and the offense of Duke is going to be found out rather early. And if you remember, I think we talked about this on Monday. The last time Duke played here, the first play from scrimmage, I think, was an 80-yard run that they took the 7-0 lead on. So Miami has to eliminate the big plays. And if you watch Duke's game last week, where they probably should have won the game, they had 5 plays of over 40 yards. You can't have that. Because that right there is 200 yards of offense just in those 5 plays. But I think the key, as you said, the key is to stop Riley Leonard. But to do it, you're going to have to defensively. Miami's going to have to call a really good game. I don't think they called a great game against North Carolina. They were fortunate that. But North Carolina was fortunate too. Giving up over 500 yards, but only 24 points. But I think that, to me, the key from the Miami's got to kind of control the offensive, the line of scrimmage. I don't know if they can, because I watched in North Carolina had a tough time controlling Duke's line of scrimmage. But Miami has to limit mistakes. And I'm just talking about their defense versus Duke's offense, and got to limit the huge plays. If they keep giving up the big plays, and they're going to be back on their heels the whole game.
Yeah, that's one thing that jumped out to me when Riley Leonard needed to show he had that long touchdown run last week where he was pulling away from North Carolina's defensive backs, and he didn't really. Normally, he's very in the box, and he's kind of like he'll grind yards out for them, but
right.
Yeah, he showed that other gear when the field opened up and he was gone. So we gotta be careful. Like you say, he's very dynamic. Would you put a spy on him? I feel like he's the whole offense is really around him. They're really balanced. They run and throw well, but I feel like if you can, limit him, the rest of the offense might go with him.
Well, you know what? If you did, I would use James Williams, because I've been aching to get James Williams in that box anyway. I've been looking to get him out of that. Like I said, I once said to Kenny Phillips after a high school game, it was a muddy day, and he was the only one with a uniform that had any mud on it. And I said, you know what? You can't sit there and film the whole game. You got to get into the action. And I think sometimes James Williams waits for the action to come to him rather than to pursue. But like Pat Surtain said, when he put James in the box as a senior in high school, he says, to me, that's how you get James closer into the action. And then he's got that, God-given ability. He's a big kid at 6'5". He's got range. So if they do spy anybody, especially with the way that Cam Kinchins has played as a safety, and then Elvante too, I think you could use him to spy and go out, because you don't want to give up anybody else. You can't give up your corners, obviously. So it'd have to be a safety. And I think Cam's too valuable. Roman the secondary, but I think if there's anybody, and I'm sure that they'll disguise coverages. That's what Steele's all about. He's been around a long time. He's seen Vish, a lot of different, really good quarterbacks and good offenses, and he's been able to game plan for them. So I don't, think it's going to be an issue of game planning and coming up with schemes. It's just that Miami has to execute. And, where people always want to put the blame on the coaches, and sometimes it's warranted, but a lot of times, if you watch their practice all week, all they do is they put the kid in the right position to make plays. Like they'll call like a blitz. And if that kid fails to get in there and then they burn him, it's not the coach's fault. They designed it right. They anticipated right. So I think that's one of the things, Miami's execution and defense. We talk about execution in an offense, and you got to hold on to the ball and ball control. But on defense, you've got to come up with, he's got to dial up some pretty good, plays. He can, and like I said, the thing that will hurt Miami is if they get a 2 scores behind, because what that does is they give Leonard an opportunity to kind of freelance, and you don't want that, because then he doesn't have to play assignment football, and then he could sit back there and whatever he wants to do. So I think it's essential to get in and get into the backfield, even if you have to blitz, and then hopefully you have the safety covers. We talked about this all the time. I think Miami's got some really good safety playmakers. So I don't think that would be a gamble. Where you're hurting is linebacker. You don't have a lot of depth there. As we talked on Monday, I don't think Caleb Johnson has really lived up to that hype. And then they've been hurt with Steed, and the 2 guys that are seen to be making the plays are Flag, who everybody, we talk about that all the time. And then Wesley Bassett, I think, is really coming into his own, which is a good thing.
Yeah, and I don't know that sacrificing a linebacker. I agree with you. If they're going to spy, it should be a safety, and you just play one deep safety, because again, this guy is dual threat. Part of that is, getting his running backs involved. So if you're going to sacrifice a linebacker, their running backs are very capable. They have 3 running backs that average over 5 yards a carry. They'll just do their option and hand it off and run all over us. You can't.
Yeah,
I don't think I agree. To sacrifice a linebacker there.
And also, Vish, because of their offensive line superior play up there, if you watch it, they've got 7 guys that they rotate on the offensive line, and that becomes a concern. Because what your objective is when you get teams down in South Florida, although it's probably, cooler than it has been, but your objective is to kind of wear them down because of the humidity that's, always, prevalent. And if you have 7 guys on a line that could play, it's going to be tough to do that because they're going to rotate and they're going to take kids in for, out for a breather. See, Miami's not that fortunate, unfortunately, but yeah, I think, like I said, the key for Miami on the defensive side is if they do spy somebody, to make sure that you've got the coverage and on the backside, but at the same time, you can't let the running beat you, whether it be from Leonard or any of the 3 backs that you mentioned. You've got to control the line of scrimmage. And, everybody's going to get stung. Miami will get stung once or twice, but can't make it a habit. You can't let them get in the 30s and the 40s because if they do, I don't think Miami has the capabilities to get up, that much, to score that much. So it's got to be a lower scoring game for Miami to come out as a winner.
Well, that's probably a very good transition to the other side of the ball. So Duke defensively, they're much better against the run than the pass, which – watching Miami the past few weeks, that might light up okay, I guess. Is this just a game where I should point out Duke's run defense is kind of average. Their pass defense is actually pretty terrible on ratings, but their scoring defense is not bad at all, and that's because they're a high turnover forcing team. They are 11th in the country in turnover margin. So that's what kind of keeps the other team from scoring. They cause a lot of turnovers. They've recovered 11 fumbles this year and haven't allowed one, haven't fumbled once. So, they're kind of dominating that matchup, and it's allowing their defense to stick with it. So do you think Miami, whether or not they can even run the ball is an open question, but should they kind of lean on the pass game here?
Well, they have to, obviously. That's what got them, it kept them in the game against North Carolina. And have they abandoned the running game? I don't think so. But, wow, it's kind of tough to figure that coming into the season, that was a strong point. You talked about everybody that they had. And, excuse me, and now they, you're without Rooster for a couple of games. And then Parrish missed last game. And, you've been without Chaney all year, so it's almost a pedestrian running game right now. And I'm not going to even bring up Thad Franklin anymore because evidently they don't see what I see or what other people see. So I just have to trust in what they do. If they're using a walk-on instead of Thad, then there must be an issue somewhere along the line. The offensive line has been average. It's not even been good at all. It's and I understand that they've had people out and they're very thin. But Vish, I'll tell you, the thing that bothers me about that is that if Miami can't, if Tyler has to, get out of the pocket too much, it's not good. Then you'll start having some holding, and they don't need that. And when he does make plays, the last thing you want to look back and see flags all the time. So Miami's best thing with him is he's a drop back passer. He's not a runner. And I know he doesn't profess to be one, and he'll run for a first down here and there. And that's only because, excuse me, the linebackers drop a little bit further. But you can almost 100% guarantee that they'll want him to throw. They're going to see what they could do because they're not, they know that they could stack the box and stop Miami's run. All they have to do is watch film. And, everybody's done it with the exception of Bethune-Cookman. So that's to me a very important part of what Miami does from the offensive side of the ball is I think Van Dyke could have a big day. You've discovered a go-to receiver now with Kobe Young. You have Brashard Smith, who's played really well over the last couple of weeks. You have a tight end. Hopefully he's going to be healthy, and he could catch, and he's shown he could catch. So what I suggest, too, is they use if they see that they can't run, they're going to have to use their running backs out of the backfield. Get them into space. And I'm not saying abandon the running game, but if they're not going to give you the running game and they're going to put everybody up, then Van Dyke could go over the middle. He can go outside. I think Kobe Young's going to be huge in this game because he's got the talent. They've got two corners. One of them's really good. He's a senior, and that's the guy that's going to probably get Kobe Young. So if Kobe's going to be covered most of the game, then you start using Brashard Smith and let Brashard Smith get into space. It's the whole thing is the trouble is not that Miami's receivers can't run. It's that they just don't catch the ball. And, in certain situations, once they get their hands on the ball, if you get Brashard's hands on the ball, he could go. If you get Kobe Young's hands on the ball, he could go. And the same thing with Redding. Redding to me, has been a disappointment, not because he hasn't produced all the time, but he's inconsistent. He'll catch some really good balls, and then he'll drop two, and you can't have that today. Obviously, Miami's going to make their mistakes, Fish. They're going to get a couple of penalties, and they're going to drop some balls, but they've got to get this thing together. This is, we're into the season now. This is coming past the halfway point. So these sophomores or freshmen are not sophomores and freshmen anymore.
Yeah, and I'm curious about the penalties because coming into last week, Miami was the best team in the ACC in regards to penalty, and last week was a penalty apocalypse. So it kind of came out of nowhere, and it was egregious. So I do wonder. A lot of them were, pre-snap offensive line penalties. So right. I'm assuming they didn't have a fun week of practice. The coaches focus on that position in particular, but be interesting to see if, some cleanup there. To your point, though, I think they got to make that transition. We still, I feel, want to be a run-first team. Now, we are willing to go away from it a lot more quickly than we were earlier in the season, but I think it's got to be a pass first. If they back off, then maybe you can get some running going, but we've proven time and again we cannot just line up and run over people. Like, we're not going to be able to do that. And Duke's run defense is solid. That would just be wasting downs. And that's also, frankly, to your point, we're going to have some drops. It happens every game. So, if you waste a down trying to run and get a yard, then those drops become magnified because now it's like 3rd and 7 when they're dropping instead of 2nd down. And so, frankly, we need all the downs we can to complete a pass. So I'm hoping, we come out throwing the ball until we get the line back healthy, get the running backs back healthy. Like, there's no point in forcing it. To your point, if we're going to a walk-on, as much as he was a scholarship player at UAB, so he's not, a typical walk-on. He basically left the scholarship to
I know.
So I get that, but if you're doing that, it's not because we didn't recruit running backs. They're all injured. So, you got to kind of face reality there and say, all right, we're going to, at least for the time being, throw to open up the run versus the other way around.
Also about Tyler Van Dyke. Now, last year we all kind of applauded what a great year he had and, how efficient he was. Last year he was a 62% passer. This year he's 64%. So, to me, it shows that, and then I said this earlier in the year, obviously he had a terrible game, against Middle Tennessee, and he didn't play well at all. But every other game, there, especially the A&M game, and you were there, so you saw, he had so many key drops, and that cannot be today. I mean, if you get your kids wide open, or if you dial up a play that you think, on the sideline, you've been in situations where they'll say, oh, this is going for 50 yards or this is going for a touchdown. And if they draw that play up and somebody messes it up by dropping it, you can't blame him for it, and that's the one thing people have to understand. It's the easiest thing to blame in a loss as a coach. The easiest to blame on an incomplete pass is a quarterback. And both of them have, like little caveats on each side. I mean, it's not always, the coach's fault, and it's not always the quarterback's fault. And I think that Van Dyke is at a place now where his confidence is back. And that's a good thing, especially, and when you look at a schedule, Vish, I mean, and you see Duke at home, you should come out of that tunnel. And I know we say this every week, and it's getting old to know that your head coach is the only one that has fire under his ass. It's almost disheartening to see that. And, when I'm at all the games there and watching the pregame, and here's Mario walking around and just jumping around and, hyped, and nobody else is sharing his enthusiasm, that's not a good thing. And I think that's got to change. And they should be able to follow the leader and say, you know what, coach is amped up, and we should be too. I just don't see how you can go through a whole week of practice and prepare and get ready and put all that time in, and then on game day you come out and you're blah about it. I've been around this game a long time, and it's just those are the things that boggle my mind the most. And then you look at Miami, they could be 4-3, with a win here, get over the 500 mark, and then start playing football. I mean, you got to stop thinking about coastal division titles and this and that. You got to just concentrate on winning a game. And if you win today, then you got to concentrate on next week. You're back on the road for a couple of weeks. And I think it's so essential to come out and focus on Duke and not look at FSU and not look at, Virginia or any of the other opponents coming up. I just think it's very essential to, for these kids to come out today and just play as good as they can. If they lose by playing the best they can, then so be it. But if they come out and hand them the game, that's going to hurt.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of where the disappointment has been. And you mentioned Van Dyke. I think overall, the issue with our offense has been just the yardage and the way they're moving the ball has not lined up to the point total one time this year.
Right.
And you mentioned the North Carolina game, putting up almost 600 yards and scoring 24 points.
Yeah.
I mean, the same thing happened in A&M, only punted a few times, 9 points. I mean, it's been chronic multiple times.
27 first downs.
Yeah,
in that game.
Yeah, it's crazy. And last week it was the penalties that did it versus the red zone offense failing. You drive, get first downs, the next thing you know, it's like 1st and 20 because you false started a couple of times and then you end up punting, and we moving the ball well, and so it's a lot of dead yardage essentially because the penalties are negating the work, the progress you're making. So I'm just hoping they finally put it together, and I feel like if the point total matches the yardage, they'll be fine because we move the ball there's not been a team they've not been able to move the ball against.
Exactly.
And it's just having that turn into actual points. Missed a couple of field goals this year in critical spots. It just never has fully come out clean. I do think, as you mentioned, some of that energy and some of that, I hate to be like rah-rah, it's just that positive thinking. Hey, we're going to do this. That'll breed to these things paying off. And I think they can come out of here with a win today. Then that's 2 in a row. They might start feeling a lot better about themselves. I know they shouldn't need wins to gain that energy. You need the energy to get the wins. It's almost they're doing it backwards. But I feel like once they start feeling better about themselves, maybe we'll see some of that come out. So that's how we got a couple of minutes left here before we, there was a game to watch. Why don't you give us your if you have one key to this game, what is it?
Well, as I was saying before, I just think the key to the game is ball control. You can't put the ball in the Duke's hands. You can't go 3 and out. You've got to at least put up a fight, and you got to take time off and as you said, if they're going to pass more, then they got to have more completion so that time stops. And when the clock stops, and I've seen it, I mean, sure, they're going to come out and they're going to try to be balanced. I mean, you got to do that. Every game, you got to at least attempt to do it. We'll see how successful they are. I mean, I've seen games where everybody's been down on the running game, and then all of a sudden they run for 160 yards. I don't think Miami's going to do that, but I still figure with Parrish back in the lineup, it gives them a better opportunity. So my key to the game is ball control and limited mistakes.
Yeah, and for me, it's the latter. Just I mean, they're not going to play totally clean, but less penalties. If Miami wins the turnover battle, there's a very, very strong chance they win this game because Duke relies on that to stay in games. So just don't turn the ball over, keep it clean, and I think they'll win. But I think the other kind of a sub point to that is cannot afford one of those Southern Miss or Middle Tennessee slow starts because if Duke with the lead is a different animal, they'll grind on you. Their quarterback is very good at controlling the game, so you need that lead. And I think a slow start can just throw everything out the window if you start slow because then you're playing a different game.
And you make a great point because all week long since last Sunday, they've been game planning for this game. They've had a lot of scenarios, and you'd hate for them to have to rip up the freaking game plan after 2 series. I mean, that's not what this, and they've had to do that a couple of times. Like I'm sure against Middle Tennessee, they didn't really even script anything. They just said, we should win this game and that's it. And then when they got behind, they were just so lost and they really had no, because you didn't figure on having the game plan in a game like that. You just go out and play your football, and it just everything went wrong. Now, I think if Miami wins this thing, it's going to be a lower scoring, like 28-24 type game. Duke wants to get this thing into the 30s. And if they get it in the 30s, I don't see how Miami's going to be able to keep up with them. To be honest, Miami hasn't given anybody any clue that they can score like that against a quality team. But I think if they keep it in the low to mid 20s, they've got a chance to win this.
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons that Miami stays in games despite not getting those point totals is the offense does, despite not actually scoring, hold the ball well and possess it and move it so the defense
in
gets
between the 20s.
Yeah, the other team doesn't get a lot of possessions to get to those 30 and 40 point totals. So
exactly.
We'll see if that continues as well.
And to the special teams, Miami's got a really good punter, obviously one of the best, if not the best in the ACC. And when Borregales is on, he's pretty lethal. So, and he kicks the ball into the end zone. So from a special teams wise, they've got to be solid there. And I don't see any reason why they won't be because they've been all the way. They don't get punts blocked, very few kicks blocked. So, yeah, that's another huge key too.
Yeah. All right, well, it's about that time. So I want to thank everyone for joining us for the pregame show. Jazz was unable to make it. He just texted me and said he had a family thing come up last minute. So he should be here for the postgame, as will Blue and myself. And we are finally got comments right at the end of the show, but good vibes. That was a good way to end it. Good vibes today. Let's get this win. We'll be here after the show, after the game with the postgame show. We'll break down what just happened. So Blue, thanks for joining me on this pregame.
All right, Bish.
Have fun. And we'll see you guys after the game.
Nice.
The 6 Rig Kane Show. Yeah. The 6 Rig Kane Show. Yeah. The 6 Rings Kane Show. You know.